Hello, everybody. I've gotten into Wingspan recently, and I, like many other beginners, have gotten frustrated at the center of very dominating strategies like laying eggs in the grassland and getting a lot of tucking birds in the wetlands. And it always seems like the forest is an ignored region because it doesn't usually generate a lot of points. So instead of just getting frustrated and waiting for ravens and killdeers all the time, I want to sort of branch out and find alternative strategies that can still get a lot of points under the right conditions. So I put out a challenge for myself to try and get as many points as I can using only birds that do not have brown powers. So that means that I'm only limited to whatever base actions I have based on the board and whatever pink powers or when played powers I can find. And in this game, you can see that I do get a pretty good starting hand with two birds that don't have brown powers I can play right away. And I go and check the tray where there is an American Woodcock, which is a juicer of a card and is worth 9 points and is very easy to get out into the grassland or forest. So that is one of my early pickups in the game. My bonus cards are pretty average. I end up going with Oologist because in this strategy, I generally get a lot of birds down. So getting eggs onto those birds is usually pretty easy. It's a low point card, but it's much more consistent to get using this strategy. I am playing this version with 5 CPUs that are on easy mode. The CPUs are very necessary to play with. I don't think I can do this challenge with Automa because it's very unlikely that I'm going to trigger the pink powers. But with 4 other CPUs, that's more CPUs that are going to be giving me food with bird feeder or hummingbird cards, maybe like the flycatcher. They'll be giving everyone some worms and giving everyone some berries. So having more CPUs just means I will have more resources to get as many points as I can. I'm also playing with the round goals on ranking system that also gives you more points, I think, than simply using the maximum. On my first turn, I go ahead and grab the Woodcock and also play my first pink power in the wetlands. I think getting birds in the wetland is very important because in this challenge, you will have to scoop for cards if there's no good cards in the tray. If it's all brown powers and you can't really play any brown powers, you just have to draw random and hope that you get good cards. But those random cards are not useless, of course. They can be used to get more food, or they can be used if I get a pink power card that can tuck, which I think I do in this challenge. I might not. I can't remember. But right up next, I'm just going to be slowly getting food and collecting food so I can place something in my forest. The most important ones to get right now is my wetlands in the forest because, like I said, I need to play a lot of birds, and there's not a lot of, draw and egg power that I'm going to be getting in this challenge from no brown powers. So I will just need a lot of food to be able to play whatever birds I can, especially if I get a wind played power that lets me play 2 birds. That's also very important. I go ahead and play the Woodcock in the forest. I did this because I wanted to keep my forest powers to a little bit more better cards that can hold more eggs and also be a little bit cheaper to play. Like, for example, if I get a house wren that can only be played in the forest that uh, also lets me play another card, then it will be a lot cheaper to play it in the forest for later. Also, I get to play both of them pretty much because I had enough food. So now I have one in each region, which just gives me a little bit more power in terms of the early game so that I can get a little bit more cards that I want. You can see I do have a pretty powerful combo right now. I have 2 pink powers, and one of them just gives an egg to the other. So when in doubt, when I'm waiting in between turns and I don't feel like scooping cards, I can just lay eggs. Considering the round end goal is eggs in ground nests, that will work very well with my American Woodcock, which is another reason why I put it in the grasslands, because I can just lay eggs right onto it, and it's not going to cost anything. I went for a random scoop on a card and unfortunately got the duck, which is a brown power, and I cannot use it, but I can discard it right away just to grab 2 new food, and I can play a card later. You can see that I'm just thinking, hey, I have this card in my hand, might as well just grab 2 food. So I'm just going to go ahead and discard because there's absolutely no use for the brown card whatsoever. And I'll go ahead and get another worm because worms are very important for the forest as well. Here's the CPUs giving me another food option with the hummingbird. I am very dependent on the other CPUs for giving me food, I will admit. This is probably not a very good strategy for playing with real life people because real life people are less likely to give you food on every turn that they use stuff because they know that it's going to help you as well. I do end up getting tied for second place, which is unfortunate because that's worth 0 points in this system, whereas otherwise I would have gotten 2 points if I used the other blue side end of round goal. But I do end up picking up a whooping crane, which does help me a lot because that will give me an instant draw 2 power as soon as I play it. So now I can pick up 2 cards instead of only picking up 1. So I will be able to pick up this Oyster Catcher, which normally I would never play. I have never liked the Oyster Catcher. I've always thought it's a bad card. I think it is a bad card. It kind of just sits there. And it also costs 2 worms, which is bad in the early game. So if you start with the card, it's bad. If it's a middle game, it's bad. If it's end game, it's bad. I guess it does count for, 3 points, 5 points, but it's still not worth it. My Whooping Crane does give me another bonus card, so that'll give me Historian. There's not a lot of Historian cards that, Historian bonus cards that will fit into this challenge because a lot of them have brown powers, but that's okay. It was better than the other one. There's a lot of bonus cards that can only be used with brown powers, like cards that have tucking or cards that have predator power. And unfortunately, I'm just never going to be able to use it. So just do whatever. The American Oyster Catcher is a good pickup because it's just something I can play. In general, I kind of want to play whatever I can find because it'll give me more draw power. It'll give me more egg space. It will give me more. It'll give me more bird points. And you can see that there is a juicer of a warbler there as well that I can pick up, and I will pick that up on this turn, I think. Yeah, I will pick it up, draw a random card, and I pick up a California Condor too, and that's huge. That is absolutely huge. I love the Condor and the Vultures in this challenge because they are all brown or they're either wind played or pink powers. So they either give me passive income or they're just a free extension of the only power I have, which is, laying eggs or drawing cards. Here, the Oyster Catcher actually comes in pretty clutch because it gives me the Red-Eyed Vireo because I have 6 cards to choose from. And then I'll get the bonus card, which unfortunately is a brown power. But of course, if it has to go in my hand, it'll go in my hand. There's no penalty in drawing the brown powers. I just can't play them. Luckily, the CPUs are giving me a ton of food to play with. And I do have a combo to just go with the Vireo and the Condor in one turn. That way I can get a bunch of cards into my forest, which will speed up my food. So here I'm going to play the Vireo, which costs 1 something. I chose a worm. I probably shouldn't have because, all the other birds that I want to play also cost a worm. So I probably should have done something like a mouse, but that's okay. I do end up being with two more birds in my forest, I'll be able to get more food in a second anyway. California Condor comes very clutch because bonus cards is one of my win conditions. I need a lot of bonus cards. I do not have a lot of birds that eat fish, unfortunately, so neither of these are very, very good. So I figure I might as well just get Breeding Manager and then hope that it's either 1 point or I might be able to get 2 points, but it's probably pretty rare that I'm going to find more birds that can lay 4 eggs. This middle game, I do have to be very careful because I have to make sure I'm managing the resources correctly and not wasting any turns. I could play the Warbler now, but is it worth spending the resources if it's not really going to give me a direct benefit in grabbing food, considering I can just discard the cards anyway? But I do end up playing it now because I'm just going to lay eggs next turn, and that is going to give me some points towards the bonus round. I notice I can't play eggs twice because I don't have enough egg space in the forest anyway. I could have played the egg somewhere else, but I just play the Warbler now, and then I go for eggs in the forest so that I can get some points towards the end of round goal. That may have been a mistake. I might have been a little greedy with that looking back. And I checked the list and I noticed that the only closest CPU has 2 eggs. So I decide, let's just lay the eggs I can and see if I still win it. If the CPU decides to lay eggs as well, then I'm going to be SOL, and that's not going to be good. But I just decided to go with it and see what happens. I did also decide to lay an egg on the branch nest because that's the next end of round goal, is the eggs on branch nests. And it turns out that I do end up winning the end of round goal, which is good. So the risk paid off, but looking back, I probably should have played it safe if the CPU was in any danger like it was in getting what I wanted. There's a Bobolink in the tray, and I'm going to pick that up too. That'll work really well with this current end of round goal. So I draw the Bobolink and 1 extra random card. And now the cards in the tray are kind of garbo again, but that's kind of how it is. The Bobolink is pretty expensive. That's not really a problem though, because the CPUs are giving me food and the CPUs are giving me eggs, and I also have 4 birds in the forest now, which means that I have plenty of food recovery. Here I'm deciding if I want to play a bird right now, or if I want to grab food, or if I want to grab some bonus cards. But I do decide to just grab food. Unfortunately, the bird feeder is kind of bad for me, but I do get a reroll and I can pick up an extra wheat and a worm so that I can play Bobolink next turn. I think a really cool thing about this challenge is you get to use a lot of birds that you never really use. I think that the Loggerhead Shriek is a terrible bird, but as you can see by the end of round point total, it absolutely comes in clutch in terms of just getting a couple more scraping points whenever a CPU were to grab a mouse. I do get to play the Bobolink, which gives me a couple more eggs in the branch nest, and I have 1 more star nest in the forest, so I should have a bunch of space for eggs in the branch nest. I do have to mention, the end of round goals have been very nice to me in this game. In general, in this strategy, I don't want to build out my grassland because I'm not going to be using it often until the very end. So considering that there's not really a lot of very prevalent grassland goals, it's just kind of eggs and special nests, and the special nests are ones that I have. That helps me out a lot. I think it's also a good reminder in this game that there's many other engines besides just finding birds that lay eggs or finding birds that get food while you lay eggs. In general, of course, the ravens are good. Of course, the killdeer is good. And I'm not disputing that. But if you end up with a hand that is just going to be absolutely horrible in the early game unless you completely change your strategy, this is a pretty good one. This is a pretty good one where you can depend on just simply playing birds that match the description and hoping that you can grab enough bonus cards in order to get a lot of points. The bonus cards do give a lot of points because if you think about it, if you play a bird that is worth 4 points, and then the bird says you get a bonus card, and then you can complete that bonus card, then that's 7 points that you get from being able to complete that bonus card and also playing that bird. And how much can you say that for a killdeer? Killdeer isn't going to give you any points. In fact, it's going to decrease points over time as you lay eggs. The only thing it's going to give you is draw power, which you can use to tuck or find better birds. But if you don't find those better birds, the killdeer is useless. This is sort of a more direct way of getting points that is besides just simply laying eggs and tucking. Here I decide to gain food. It is really weird to gain food with 4 birds in my forest and then just nothing happening. I'm just like, oh, let me grab 3 food, and then it kind of runs down the line with all the other birds, and it notices, hey, you don't have any brown powers. What are you doing, buddy? I do notice that I have an Inca dove in the tray. I have the warbler that I can use to draw 2 new bonus cards. Or, actually, no, I'm thinking if I play the pelican and I play the warbler and then just lay eggs, then I'll pretty much max out, and I don't grab the Inca dove. I decide against getting the Inca dove because wasting a turn in the final round when I have all my point totals, and also I need to complete some bonus cards, and also I need to lay eggs. then it wasn't worth wasting a turn, especially since the Inkadub's ability is to lay eggs on all of my branch nests, but all my branch nests were full from the last turn, so there's not really a point to. Also, the Warbler has a cup nest, which is the current round 4 goal, and getting those points will also be very important. Luckily, I do have enough to play the Brown Pelican, so I'm going to discard 2 eggs to play Brown Pelican for 2 points total. And then my final 4 turns is pretty much just going to be playing the Warbler, which will give me another bonus card and also another cup nest that I can fill up for the end of round goal. And it seems really, really weird that I end up with a full forest and only 2 cards in my grassland, because that's kind of backwards, right? Usually it's the other way around. Everyone has 5 birds in their grassland so that they can lay a bunch of eggs, with the quails and the bush tits of the world. But this time it's kind of opposite. I don't really want to focus on laying eggs. I want to focus on getting food so that I can play more birds, especially since I have the Oologist's bonus card, which I've already completed at this point for the full 6 points. And just having more birds means more bird points, which means more bonus cards, which means more eggs that I can lay. And considering I can't tuck anything, then that's pretty important. Actually, I shouldn't say that I can't tuck anything. There is 1 card with a pink power that tucks, and that's the Horned Lark. And I usually don't think it's that good, but considering it's one of the only... It is the only tucking power that I can use to get any points whatsoever that's passive besides the Loggerhead Shriek. That's pretty cool. I do get the power to lay eggs on the cup nests, and that also helps me a bunch to get this end of round goal. So I'm going to be laying eggs and keeping a couple of spaces open for the abilities in the next 2 or 3 turns. And here I am just waiting. Luckily, I believe starting this turn, the CPUs start actually taking mice from the bird feeder for some reason. Okay, it might be next turn. I get to lay an egg on a cup nest, and then I'm going to lay more eggs. I make sure to leave 1 spot open on the cup nest for if I launch the ability again. So I'm just going to lay it on the Brown Pelican. I wanted to play it a little bit safe because technically there is 2 turns that I could use that pink power to land eggs on the cup. But I wanted to make sure that I get full eggage. So I just kind of waited and played it safe. I might have been able to squeeze out 1 more point if I did it the other way, but who knows what the CPUs are going to do. Maybe they don't lay eggs. Who knows? I get that ability 1 more time, and with that, I will not have any more eggs. And a CPU grabbed a mouse from the bird feeder, meaning my Loggerhead Shriek got 1 cached on it. That's pretty cool. I'm going to lay eggs for my final turn. That will bring up another 3 points. And now I just wait because I do not have any more nests that can be laid in. I'll have to skip the next power. And I finally get 1 more cached because the CPU decided to take 1 more mouse. Just 1 more mouse at the very end on the last turn. And I do end up getting the end of round goal because I had a ton of eggs in the cup. And let's see how this point total shows up. Because you'll see how important that mouse was in a second. I had a ton of points from birds cards, a ton of points from bonus, a ton from end of round goals. The eggs were really good. I had 3 food from cards, and that brought me exactly to 100 points. That is absolutely insane to me that I was able to get 100 points exactly just because the CPU decided to be nice and grab a mouse from the bird feeder exactly when I needed it on the last turn. I don't know what the CPU was thinking, but maybe they had like tucking powers in their forest that they wanted to trigger and they were full of eggs or something, but I don't know what's going to be up with that. Here was the overview of all the cards that I played. As you can see, all the cards left in my hand were brown powers, meaning I played every single not brown power that I ever drew. The MVP of this was probably the egg laying and cup nest card, the Cucko that was in the top left in the forest. That was a very important card because it let me draw passive eggs, and it also got me a little bit closer to the round goal at the end. And also the double card into the random draw California Condor was a very big play. And also the Oyster Catcher surprisingly gave me 1 more card that I needed in order to play into the forest correctly. and of course all the juicers along the way. The whooping crane, the warbler, and the American woodcock all do not really have very solid abilities, but they are worth a lot of points, and that's really all that matters. So thank you guys for watching this video. It was a lot of fun to do this challenge. Maybe I'll do more in the future. And if you want to see more in the future, then subscribe. And if you notice I want to do anything different, or if you have a suggestion for a type of challenge that you have tried in the past, then let me know down in the comments. Until next time, keep birding on. All right.